Abigail Foster jolted awake as the plane hit a patch of turbulence. Disoriented from her exhausted slumber, she realized with horror that her head had been resting on the shoulder of the stranger seated beside her. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment as she quickly pulled away, mumbling apologies while trying to smooth her disheveled auburn hair. It was then that she noticed the platinum wedding band on his left hand, glinting under the cabin lights. "I'm so sorry," she said, mortified. "I didn't mean to—" "No harm done," the man replied with a kind smile that reached his deep blue eyes. "You looked like you needed the rest." Abigail clutched her worn leather purse tightly, still flustered. Just her luck to embarrass herself in front of someone who looked like he belonged on the cover of Fortune magazine, rather than in seat 14B of economy class on a red-eye from Chicago to Seattle. His tailored charcoal suit contrasted sharply with her simple jeans and sweater, making her acutely aware of the differences between them. "Mom, are we there yet?" 6-year-old Mia's sleepy voice drifted up from the window seat, momentarily distracting Abigail from her embarrassment. "Not yet, sweetie. Another hour to go. Go back to sleep," Abigail whispered, tucking the unicorn blanket around her daughter's small shoulders. Mia's dark curls, so like her father's, spilled across the airplane pillow as she drifted back to sleep. The man beside her cleared his throat softly. "Jackson Hayes," he offered, extending his hand. "Though my friends call me Jack." "Abigail Foster," she replied, hesitantly taking his hand. "And that's my daughter, Mia." "Heading home or away?" Jack asked, his voice pleasantly deep and surprisingly genuine for a man who looked like he could buy the airline if he wanted to. "Home, I hope," Abigail answered, her voice catching slightly. "We're starting over in Seattle. I've got a job interview at Pacific Northwest Medical Center tomorrow morning." She hadn't meant to share that much. Something about the gentle turbulence of the plane and the intimacy of the darkened cabin made her guard slip. Or perhaps it was simply exhaustion from the past 3 months of upheaval after her divorce was finalized. "Pediatric nursing," she added when he looked interested. "I specialized in childhood oncology in Chicago, but after the divorce—" She trailed off, annoyed at herself for oversharing with a complete stranger, a married stranger at that. "I know the chief of medicine at PNMC," Jack mentioned casually, reaching for his water bottle. "Dr. Harriet Calloway is an old family friend." Of course he did. Men like him always knew people in high places. Abigail managed a polite nod, while rummaging through her bag for her interview notes, suddenly paranoid that she was unprepared. "I'm not trying to make you nervous," Jack said, seeming to read her thoughts. "I could put in a good word, that's all. Harriet values my opinion." "Thank you, but I'd rather earn the position on my own merits," Abigail replied, perhaps too stiffly. The last thing she needed was charity, especially from a handsome married man who made her heart race, despite her better judgment. Jack raised his hands in surrender, an amused smile playing at his lips. "Fair enough. I respect that." The flight attendant passed by, offering beverages. Jack ordered a sparkling water while Abigail asked for coffee, desperately needing the caffeine to keep her wits about her. "So what takes you to Seattle?" Abigail asked, attempting small talk to dispel the awkwardness. "Home as well," he replied, loosening his tie slightly. "I've been in Chicago finalizing the acquisition of a medical technology company. My firm develops healthcare solutions." "Your firm?" "Hayes Innovations," he answered without a hint of pretension. "We're working on making pediatric treatments more accessible and less traumatic for kids." Abigail's professional interest was piqued despite herself. "That's actually really important work." "It is," Jack agreed, his expression softening as he glanced at sleeping Mia. "My niece went through treatment for leukemia when she was 4. The experience changed my whole perspective on what matters in life." For the next 30 minutes, they talked about advancements in pediatric care, exchanging insights that left Abigail impressed by his knowledge and genuine passion. She found herself relaxing, almost forgetting about the ring on his finger. Almost, but not quite. "You should get some rest before your interview," Jack finally said, checking his watch. "We land in about 40 minutes. "You're right," Abigail agreed reluctantly, realizing she'd enjoyed their conversation more than she cared to admit. She leaned back and closed her eyes, determined to maintain a professional distance. When she awoke again, the plane was beginning its descent into Seattle. Rain streaked the windows, providing Abigail's first glimpse of her new home. Beside her, Jack was typing rapidly on his laptop, his profile illuminated by the screen's glow. "Welcome to Seattle," he said when he noticed she was awake. "Rain capital of America. You'll get used to it eventually." As they prepared for landing, Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "For when you decide that accepting help isn't the same as accepting charity," he said, placing it on her tray table. Abigail hesitated before taking it, tucking it into her purse without looking at it. "Thank you for the conversation," she said formally. "It was nice meeting you." "Likewise, Abigail," Jack replied with a smile that made her stomach flip inappropriately. After they landed, Abigail focused on gathering their belongings and waking Mia, deliberately avoiding further conversation. She watched as Jack took a call, speaking in the authoritative tone of someone used to giving orders. The wedding ring caught the light again, a pointed reminder of boundaries she shouldn't cross. "Ready, sweetie?" she asked Mia, who nodded sleepily, clutching her stuffed unicorn. As they made their way through the terminal, Abigail was surprised to see Jack waiting by the baggage claim. He approached them with a warm smile. "I've arranged for a car to take you to your hotel," he said. "Consider it a welcome to Seattle gift, not charity." Before Abigail could protest, a uniformed driver approached. "Ms. Foster, I'm here to take you and your daughter to the Westlake Suites." Abigail turned to Jack in disbelief. "How did you—" "I have connections," he said simply. "Good luck tomorrow, Abigail. I have a feeling Seattle is going to be good for you and Mia." As they followed the driver, Mia looked back at Jack curiously. "Mom, who's that man?" Abigail glanced over her shoulder one last time, watching as Jack walked toward a waiting black SUV, phone pressed to his ear. "Just someone we met on the plane, sweetie." What she didn't say was how conflicted she felt, grateful for his kindness, yet troubled by her attraction to a married man. And she certainly didn't mention the business card burning a hole in her purse, representing a temptation she knew she should resist. Outside, Seattle's rain welcomed them, washing away Chicago and offering a clean slate. Tomorrow would bring her interview and the real beginning of their new life, a life that had no room for complicated feelings about charming married CEOs, no matter how kind they seemed. The Westlake Suites exceeded anything Abigail could have afforded on her own. As she tucked Mia into bed that night, guilt gnawed at her for accepting Jack's generosity. The business card sat on the nightstand, Hayes Innovations embossed in silver against matte black. She should throw it away. She didn't. Sleep eluded her as she rehearsed interview answers, her thoughts drifting repeatedly to blue eyes and a wedding ring. By morning, dark circles shadowed her eyes, but determination straightened her spine as she dressed in her one good suit, navy blue, conservative, a remnant from her life, before Mark cleaned out their accounts and left her scrambling to rebuild. "You look pretty, Mummy," Mia said, watching Abigail apply mascara in the hotel bathroom. "Thank you, sweetheart." Abigail smiled at her daughter's reflection. "Are you excited about your day at the Hotel Kids Club?" Mia nodded enthusiastically. "They have a craft table and movies and everything." An hour later, with Mia safely entertained, Abigail stood before the imposing glass facade of Pacific Northwest Medical Center. Rain drizzled around her as she took a deep breath, clutching her portfolio. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, pushing through the revolving doors. The interview panel consisted of 3 people: Dr. Benjamin Wright, head of pediatrics, nurse manager Tanya Rodriguez, and Dr. Harriet Calloway, the chief of medicine Jack had mentioned. Dr. Calloway was a formidable woman in her 60s, with silver hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to evaluate everything. "Ms. Foster," Dr. Calloway began, "your credentials are impressive. 7 years at Chicago Children's Hospital, specialized training in pediatric oncology, excellent references. What brings you to Seattle?" The question was delivered neutrally, but Abigail sensed deeper scrutiny. "A fresh start," she answered honestly. "I believe my experience would be valuable to your oncology department, and Seattle offers the environment I want for raising my daughter." Dr. Wright nodded approvingly. "Your case studies are quite remarkable. The Sullivan Boys treatment plan was particularly innovative." The interview progressed smoothly, with Abigail growing more confident as she described her approach to patient care, until Dr. Calloway leaned forward with a final question. "Did Jackson Hayes recommend you for this position?" Abigail froze momentarily. "We met briefly on the flight here. He mentioned knowing you, but I asked him not to intervene. I prefer to be judged on my own merits." Dr. Calloway's expression remained unreadable. "Interesting. Jack rarely mentions potential candidates unless he's impressed. She closed her folder. Thank you for your time, Ms. Foster. We'll be in touch. Outside, rain had given way to watery sunshine. Abigail texted the hotel to check on Mia, then decided to explore the neighborhood around the hospital. Her mind whirled with uncertainty. Had she ruined her chances by not leveraging Jack's connection, or impressed them with her independence? She was so lost in thought that she almost walked straight into someone coming out of a coffee shop. Abigail. She looked up, startled to find Jack Hayes standing before her, coffee in hand. Today he wore a more casual outfit, dark jeans and a blue sweater that matched his eyes, though his watch probably cost more than her car. Jack, Mr. Hayes. Abigail took an instinctive step back. What are you doing here? Getting coffee, he said, raising his cup with an amused smile. Our offices are just down the block. How was the interview? Fine, I think. She shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Calloway asked if you'd recommended me. Jack winced slightly. I may have called her this morning, just to mention that we'd met. I wish you hadn't, Abigail said, frustration bubbling up. I told you I wanted to do this on my own. You're right. I apologize. His sincerity caught her off guard. Let me make it up to you. Join me for lunch. There's a great place around the corner. She should say no. She knew she should. But Mia was happy at the kids' club until 4, and the prospect of sitting alone in the hotel room held no appeal. Just lunch, she agreed cautiously, as colleagues. The restaurant was a small bistro with views of Elliott Bay. Jack ordered for both of them with the easy confidence of a regular, recommending the salmon that Seattle was famous for. Despite her reservations, Abigail found herself relaxing as they discussed healthcare innovations and her experiences in Chicago. You never mentioned what happened with your ex, Jack said, as they finished their meals. Abigail tensed. It's not a pleasant story. Sometimes talking helps, he offered, his expression compassionate rather than prying. Perhaps it was the wine, or simply the need to unburden herself to someone who didn't know Mark, but Abigail found herself sharing the painful details. He was a financial advisor. I trusted him completely. Then one day I discovered he'd been embezzling from clients and hiding assets offshore. When the authorities closed in, he transferred our savings to accounts I couldn't access and disappeared. Her finger traced the condensation on her water glass. Left me with a mountain of legal bills and a daughter who still asks when Daddy's coming home. Jack's expression darkened. That's despicable. Have they caught him? Not yet. Last I heard he was somewhere in South America. Abigail straightened her shoulders. But we're moving forward. Mia deserves stability and I'm determined to provide it. You're remarkable, Jack said quietly, his admiration evident. The moment stretched between them, charged with an energy Abigail knew better than to acknowledge. She deliberately glanced at his wedding ring, a physical reminder of boundaries. Your wife must be looking forward to having you home, she said lightly, changing the subject. Something flickered across Jack's face, pain, perhaps, or resignation. Andrea and I have been separated for almost a year, he said, twisting the ring absently. The divorce papers are being finalized next month. Oh. Abigail didn't know what else to say. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time coming. He sighed. We married young, grew in different directions. No children, thankfully, though we tried. She's in Los Angeles now, pursuing her acting career without me holding her back. Yet you still wear the ring, Abigail observed, unsure why it mattered so much. Jack looked down at his hand, as if surprised to find the band still there. Habit, I suppose, or reluctance to face questions. In business, being married suggests stability. Their conversation was interrupted by Abigail's phone. A Seattle area code flashed on the screen. Excuse me, she said, heart pounding as she answered. Hello? Yes, this is Abigail Foster. Jack watched her expression transform from tension to disbelief to joy. Yes, absolutely, I can start Monday. Thank you so much, Dr. Calloway. She hung up, momentarily speechless. Good news? Jack asked, though her face had already given away the answer. I got the job, Abigail whispered, then louder. I got the job, full benefits, salary better than I expected, and they're even offering relocation assistance. Without thinking, she reached across the table and squeezed Jack's hand. The contact sent a jolt through her and she quickly withdrew. Congratulations, he said warmly. They'd have been fools not to hire you. I should get back to Mia, Abigail said, suddenly needing distance from the confusing emotions swirling through her. She'll be thrilled about the job. It means we can start looking for an apartment right away. I might be able to help with that too, Jack offered. Not charity, he added quickly, seeing her expression. My company owns several residential buildings. Employee housing originally, but we've opened them to healthcare workers too. Good locations, reasonable rent. Why are you doing all this? Abigail asked, her voice soft but direct. Jack considered the question seriously. Initially, because I recognized someone who deserved a break. Now, his eyes held hers. Because I enjoy your company, Abigail. More than I probably should. The admission hung between them, honest and complicated. I should go, she repeated, gathering her purse. Thank you for lunch and for everything else. At least let me give you a ride back to the hotel. She agreed, and they traveled in thoughtful silence. Outside Westlake Suites, his driver waited as Jack walked her to the entrance. I have to fly to Boston tomorrow, he told her. Business meetings for the rest of the week, but I'd like to see you again when I return. Maybe you and Mia would join me for dinner. I know a place with excellent mac and cheese. Abigail hesitated, rational caution warring with undeniable attraction. I don't know if that's a good idea. My life is complicated enough right now. Just dinner, he said. As friends, or potential friends at least. Her phone buzzed with a text from the kids' club, saving her from an immediate answer. I need to get Mia. Of course. Jack took a step back. You have my number. The invitation stands, regardless of your decision. As he walked away, Abigail felt both relief and regret. Starting over in Seattle was supposed to be about stability and independence, not complicated feelings for a man still wearing a wedding ring. Yet as she collected Mia and listened to her daughter's excited chatter about her day, she couldn't help checking her purse to make sure Jack's card was still there. Later, as Mia slept, Abigail's phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Apartment viewing arranged for tomorrow 10 a.m. Address below, no strings attached. Congratulations again on the job. Jack. Abigail stared at the message, torn between professional gratitude and personal wariness. Seattle was already proving more complicated than she had anticipated, and she'd been in the city less than 48 hours. The apartment exceeded Abigail's expectations. Spacious and bright, with 2 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a small balcony offering glimpses of Puget Sound between neighboring buildings. The property manager, a cheerful woman named Patty, explained that it was part of Hayes Innovations' community housing initiative. We don't normally have vacancies, Patty confided, as she showed them the building's amenities, but Mr. Hayes specifically requested this unit be made available. He mentioned you're joining Pacific Northwest Medical. Yes, Abigail confirmed, watching Mia explore the children's playroom adjacent to the lobby. I start Monday. Perfect. Many of our residents are healthcare workers. There's even a shuttle to the hospital district. Patty handed her a folder of paperwork. The rent is significantly below market value, part of Mr. Hayes' commitment to essential workers. Abigail hesitated. The apartment was perfect, the location ideal, and the rent actually affordable on her new salary. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that accepting would somehow deepen her connection to Jack in ways she wasn't ready for. Mum, can I have the room with the window seat? Mia called, excitement brightening her face. After months of uncertainty, seeing her daughter genuinely happy made the decision easier. We'll take it, Abigail told Patty, pushing aside her reservations. The weekend passed in a whirlwind of activity. Abigail arranged for their modest belongings to be shipped from storage in Chicago and purchased essential furniture from a discount outlet. By Sunday evening, their new apartment had begun to feel like home. Mia had decorated her room with unicorn decals, while Abigail splurged on fresh flowers for the kitchen table, a small celebration of their new beginning. Throughout these busy days, Jack remained in Boston, though his influence was evident in the smooth transition. A welcome basket had awaited them at the apartment, filled with Seattle specialties and children's books about the Pacific Northwest. The card simply read, "Welcome home, Jay." On Monday morning, Abigail dropped Mia at her new school before heading to PNMC for her first day. Dr. Calloway greeted her personally, introducing her to the pediatric oncology team. "We're fortunate to have you, Abigail," Dr. Calloway said as they walked the hallways. "Your references were impeccable, and your approach to patient care aligns perfectly with our philosophy." Abigail couldn't help asking the question that had nagged at her. Did Mr. Hayes's recommendation influence your decision? Dr. Calloway stopped walking, fixing Abigail with a penetrating look. Jack mentioned meeting you, yes. But we hire based on merit, not connections. Her expression softened slightly. Though I admit Jack rarely takes personal interest in potential staff, he spoke quite highly of you. The work itself was familiar territory for Abigail. The medical challenges, the brave children, the worried parents. By week's end, she had settled into her role, already developing rapport with patients and colleagues alike. Nurse Rodriguez had become particularly friendly, inviting Abigail to join a group of hospital staff for drinks after work. So, Tanya asked when they were seated at a nearby bar, nursing cocktails, how do you know Jackson Hayes? Abigail nearly choked on her drink. We met on the flight here. Why? Tanya exchanged glances with Dr. Wright, who had joined them. Because Hayes Innovations basically built our pediatric oncology wing, and Jack Hayes never personally arranges apartments for new staff, he explained. You've got the whole hospital curious. There's nothing to be curious about, Abigail insisted, uncomfortable with the speculation. We had a conversation about healthcare on the plane. He was kind enough to offer connections. That's all. If you say so, Tanya replied, clearly unconvinced. But fair warning, Andrea Hayes is on the hospital board. If there is something between you and Jack, she'll make your life difficult. Their separation wasn't exactly amicable. Abigail's stomach knotted. There's nothing between us, she repeated firmly, and I'm not interested in workplace drama. Later that evening, as she paid the babysitter and checked on sleeping Mia, Abigail's phone buzzed with a text. Back from Boston. Dinner offer still stands. Saturday? She stared at Jack's message, Tanya's warning echoing in her mind. Getting involved with Jack Hayes, even as friends, clearly carried complications she didn't need. Yet her finger hovered over the screen, temptation warring with caution. Before she could reply, another text arrived. Mia welcome too, of course. The aquarium first, perhaps. The mention of her daughter decided her. That's very kind, but we're still settling in. Maybe another time. His response came quickly. No pressure. The invitation remains open. The following Tuesday, Abigail was reviewing patient charts when the pediatric ward erupted in excitement. She looked up to see a familiar figure surrounded by hospital staff, Jack Hayes distributing toys and electronic tablets to delighted children. Her heart performed an unwelcome somersault as he spotted her. Abigail! He greeted her with a warm smile. How are you settling in? Very well, thank you, she replied, acutely aware of the curious glances from her colleagues. The apartment is perfect. Glad to hear it. He seemed about to say more when Dr. Calloway approached. Jack, the board meeting starts in 5 minutes, and Andrea's already asking where you are. Something flickered across Jack's face, the same expression Abigail had noticed when he mentioned his wife before. I'll be right there, Harriet. He turned back to Abigail. Perhaps we could catch up later. Coffee in the cafeteria. I'm rather busy today, she demurred. Another time. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course. Enjoy your day, Abigail. She watched him walk away, telling herself the disappointment she felt was inappropriate and unwelcome. That evening, tucking Mia into bed, Abigail listened to her daughter's prayers. And please help Mommy's friend Mr. Jack because he looked sad today. Abigail froze. What do you mean? When did you see Mr. Jack? At school, he came to talk about computers and gave everyone special tablets. He recognized me from the airplane and asked if we liked our new home. Mia yawned. He said he has a niece my age named Sophia, who had cancer but got better. Sleep eluded Abigail that night. Jack Hayes seemed to be everywhere in her new life. Her apartment, her hospital, now even Mia's school. Was it coincidence, genuine kindness, or something more calculated? The thought made her uneasy. Her concerns were temporarily forgotten the next morning when she received an urgent call from the hospital. A new patient had arrived, 6-year-old Thomas Reeves, recently diagnosed with the same aggressive leukemia Jack had mentioned his niece surviving. The day passed in a blur of medical consultations and parental reassurances. Abigail stayed late, ensuring Thomas was comfortable and his terrified parents informed about treatment options. When she finally left, the hospital corridors were quiet, most staff already gone. As she waited for the elevator, the doors opened to reveal Jack and a striking blonde woman in animated conversation. They fell silent upon seeing Abigail. Abigail, Jack said, surprised. Working late? New patient, she explained awkwardly, stepping into the elevator. The blonde woman scrutinized Abigail with undisguised interest. And you are? Abigail Foster, pediatric oncology nurse, she answered, feeling inexplicably defensive. Andrea Hayes, the woman replied coolly. Board member and Jack's wife. Abigail's gaze flew to Jack's hand. The wedding ring that had troubled her was gone. Soon-to-be ex-wife, Jack corrected, tension evident in his voice. We were just discussing the finalization of our divorce. Andrea's laugh held no humor. Among other things, like your sudden interest in personally selecting hospital staff. The elevator reached the lobby, and Abigail stepped out quickly. It was nice meeting you, Mrs. Hayes. Excuse me, I need to pick up my daughter. Abigail, wait, Jack called after her, but she hurried toward the exit, confusion and embarrassment heating her cheeks. Outside, rain poured in typical Seattle fashion. Abigail had forgotten her umbrella, and the employee shuttle had already departed. As she resigned herself to getting drenched, a sleek black car pulled alongside her. The window lowered to reveal Jack, alone. Can I give you a lift? No, thank you, she replied stiffly. I'll catch a cab. Please, Abigail, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Your personal life is none of my business. What if I want it to be? His direct question caught her off guard. At least let me drive you home. This rain is relentless. Logic overcame pride, and Abigail slid into the car, careful to maintain distance between them. I apologize for Andrea, Jack said as they pulled away from the curb. Our divorce has been complicated. You don't owe me explanations, Abigail insisted, though questions burned inside her. We barely know each other. Jack guided the car through rain-slicked streets. That's not entirely true, is it? Sometimes connections form quickly, unexpectedly. Before she could respond, his phone rang. Jack glanced at the screen and frowned. I need to take this. It's Sophia's mother, my sister, he answered, his expression growing increasingly grave as he listened. When he disconnected, anguish had replaced the earlier tension. What's wrong? Abigail asked, concern overriding her determination to remain distant. Sophia's leukemia has returned, Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. The doctors have called for immediate hospitalization. Laura is beside herself. Without hesitation, Abigail reached across the seat to touch his arm. I'm so sorry, Jack. Do you need to go to them? He nodded, visibly struggling to maintain composure. They're at Seattle Children's. I should be there, but I promised to get you home. Take me with you, she offered, surprising herself. Maybe I can help. Jack's grateful look stirred something in Abigail she'd been trying desperately to ignore. When they arrived at Seattle Children's Hospital, she followed him inside, professional instincts taking over as they located Sophia's room. The scene was achingly familiar. A pale child in a hospital bed, frightened parents, the sterile smell of medical necessity. Laura Hayes, Jack's sister, looked up with tear-stained eyes as they entered. Jack, thank God, she whispered, embracing her brother. This is Abigail Foster, Jack introduced. She's a pediatric oncology nurse at PNMC, one of the best. Laura grasped Abigail's hand with desperate hope. Can you help us understand what's happening? The doctors here are saying things I don't understand. For the next hour, Abigail translated medical jargon, explained treatment protocols, and offered the compassionate clarity she'd provided to countless other families. Jack watched her with undisguised admiration, occasionally asking insightful questions that revealed his deep knowledge of Sophia's condition. When they finally left, Sophia was sleeping, and Laura appeared marginally calmer. In the hospital parking lot, Jack turned to Abigail. Thank you, he said simply. What you did in there, it meant everything to Laura, to me. It's my job, she replied, though they both knew she'd gone far beyond professional obligation. No, Jack disagreed softly. What you did came from who you are. He hesitated. Abigail, I need to tell you something important. About Andrea, about why I was still wearing my ring when we met. Abigail's phone rang, interrupting the moment. The babysitter's number flashed on the screen. I need to take this, she said, suddenly remembering how late it had become. The sitter's voice was apologetic, but firm. Miss Foster, I'm sorry, but I have an early class tomorrow. I can't stay much longer. Of course, I'm so sorry. I'll be right there, Abigail promised, disconnecting with a sigh. I have to go. The sitter can't stay. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. "We'll talk another time." As they drove to Abigail's apartment, a new awareness hummed between them, of shared purpose, of unexpected connection, of possibilities neither had anticipated when they first met on that flight from Chicago. Outside her building, Jack turned to her. "Abigail, whatever you might have heard about me, whatever Andrea implied, there's more to the story than you know. Jack, just promise you'll let me explain. Tomorrow, coffee at the hospital cafeteria." Abigail hesitated, then nodded. "All right, tomorrow." As she entered her apartment and paid the sitter, Abigail found herself both dreading and anticipating their conversation. Whatever Jack Hayes needed to tell her, she sensed it would change everything. Abigail barely slept that night, her mind swirling with questions about Jack, Andrea, and the undeniable connection she felt despite her best efforts to remain detached. By morning, she'd resolved to listen to his explanation, but maintain professional boundaries afterward. Mia deserved stability, not complications. After dropping Mia at school, Abigail arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. She checked on Thomas Reeves first, pleased to see the boy responding well to initial treatments. His parents had spent the night in his room, their exhausted faces brightening slightly when she explained the positive indicators in his latest blood work. "Sometimes I think hope is the most powerful medicine we have," Thomas's mother said, clutching her son's hand. "I believe that too," Abigail replied, thinking of Jack's niece and the battle she now faced again. The cafeteria was crowded when Abigail arrived for her scheduled coffee with Jack. She spotted him immediately at a corner table, his expression serious as he scrolled through messages on his phone. The absence of his wedding ring was conspicuous now that she knew to look for its absence rather than its presence. "Good morning," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Jack looked up, relief evident in his eyes. "You came? I wasn't entirely sure you would." "I said I would listen," Abigail reminded him, accepting the coffee he'd already purchased for her. "So I'm listening." Jack took a deep breath. "The first thing you should know is that my marriage to Andrea effectively ended 3 years ago, though we only legally separated last year." "What happened?" Abigail asked, surprised by her own directness. "Sophia's diagnosis," Jack answered, pain shadowing his face. "My niece was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia when she was 4. Andrea and I had been trying unsuccessfully for years to have children of our own. Sophia's illness changed my priorities completely. I became obsessed with finding better treatments, more comfortable hospital experiences for kids. I started Hayes Innovations' pediatric division, spent every spare moment with Sophia during her treatment." He paused, rotating his coffee cup between his palms. Andrea couldn't understand. She saw it as me transferring my desire for children to Sophia, which wasn't entirely wrong. We grew apart. When Sophia went into remission, Andrea asked for a separation, said she needed space to pursue her own dreams, acting specifically. "But you kept wearing your ring," Abigail observed quietly. Jack nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "Initially for business reasons, stability matters to investors. Then out of habit, and finally," he met her eyes directly, "because it was a convenient barrier when I wasn't ready to be vulnerable again." "Until our flight," Abigail said, understanding dawning. "Until I woke up to find a beautiful woman asleep on my shoulder, and later discovered she was exactly the kind of person I'd been waiting to meet without realizing it." Jack's sincerity was disarming. "I took the ring off the day after we met, Abigail, before I even knew if I'd see you again. What about Andrea? She seemed territorial yesterday." Jack's expression hardened slightly. "Andrea wants the prestige of being connected to Hayes Innovations without the commitment of our marriage. The divorce settlement is generous, perhaps too generous. She's fighting for a seat on the company board, which I've refused, hence her interest in why I'm personally selecting hospital staff." Abigail absorbed this information, still uncertain. "It all seems very complicated." "Life usually is," Jack acknowledged, "but some things are surprisingly simple." He reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of hers. "I'm drawn to you, Abigail, your compassion, your strength, your dedication to Mia. I'd like to explore what might be possible between us if you're willing." Before she could respond, Abigail's pager buzzed urgently. Thomas Reeves's room number flashed on the screen. "I have to go," she said, standing quickly. Emergency with a patient. Jack stood as well. I understand. Can we continue this conversation later? I don't know, Jack. Uncertainty colored her voice. I need time to think. His expression was disappointed but respectful. Of course. Abigail hurried to Thomas's room, finding the boy in respiratory distress. For the next several hours, she focused entirely on stabilizing him, working alongside Dr. Wright and the oncology team. By afternoon, the crisis had passed, though Thomas remained in critical condition. Exhausted, Abigail was updating the boy's chart when her phone rang. Mia's school. Her daughter had spiked a fever and needed to be picked up immediately. With Thomas finally stable, Abigail received permission to leave early. She found Mia in the school nurse's office, flushed and miserable. My throat hurts, Mommy, she whimpered as Abigail carried her to a cab. At home, Abigail tucked Mia into bed with children's fever reducer and plenty of fluids. Her daughter's temperature continued rising despite medication, concerning Abigail enough to call her pediatrician. The doctor advised monitoring overnight, but bringing Mia to the emergency room if the fever reached 104. By midnight, it had. Abigail bundled her semi-conscious daughter into a taxi, heart pounding with fear as they headed to PNMC's emergency department. The waiting room was packed, and despite Abigail identifying herself as staff, the triage nurse could only promise they'd be seen as soon as possible. 2 hours later, Mia's fever had reached 104.5, and she'd grown increasingly lethargic. Desperate, Abigail was considering whom she might call for help when she heard a familiar voice at the reception desk. I need to find Abigail Foster and her daughter immediately. Jack. He spotted her across the waiting room, moving quickly to her side. Laura called me. She was checking up on you after yesterday, and the night nurse mentioned you'd brought Mia in. His expression grew concerned as he saw Mia's condition. How long have you been waiting? 2 hours, Abigail said, fighting tears of exhaustion and worry. Her fever keeps rising and they're overwhelmed tonight. Without hesitation, Jack scooped Mia into his arms. Follow me. Whatever influence Jack Hayes wielded at PNMC, it was considerable. Within minutes, they were escorted to a private examination room where a doctor promptly appeared. Throat cultures were taken, blood drawn, and IV fluids started to combat Mia's dehydration. Abigail stood at her daughter's bedside, stroking her hair and murmuring reassurances. Jack remained nearby, a steady presence as tests were run and treatments administered. When the doctor finally confirmed a diagnosis of strep throat with secondary infection, Abigail sagged with relief. Serious but treatable. They want to keep her overnight for observation and IV antibiotics, she told Jack after the doctor left. You should go home. You've done more than enough. I'm staying, he replied simply. Unless you really want me to leave. The truth was, she didn't. His calm support had become a lifeline during the frightening hours of uncertainty. Thank you, she whispered. By morning, Mia's fever had broken, and she was sitting up in bed watching cartoons while sipping apple juice. Jack had disappeared briefly, returning with coffee and breakfast for Abigail. You look like you need this more than sleep, he said, handing her a large cup of the hospital's surprisingly decent coffee. You didn't have to stay all night, Abigail told him, though gratitude warmed her voice. I wanted to. Jack sat beside her, watching Mia laugh at the television. She reminds me of Sophia at that age, resilient, bright-eyed. Abigail studied him thoughtfully. How is Sophia doing? Scared but determined. They've started her on a new protocol. His voice caught slightly. Your advice yesterday helped Laura ask the right questions. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. They sat in companionable silence until Mia noticed Jack was back. Mr. Jack, did you see? I got to ride in a special bed with wheels. Jack grinned at her enthusiasm. I did see that. Very impressive. Are you my mum's boyfriend? Mia asked with a child's directness, making Abigail nearly choke on her coffee. Mia, she admonished, cheeks burning. Jack laughed softly. No, Mia. Right now, I'm just your mum's friend. Oh, Mia considered this. My friend Tyler has 2 dads now. His first dad left like mine did. An awkward silence fell, broken when the doctor arrived to examine Mia. Jack stepped into the hallway to give them privacy, and Abigail seized the opportunity to collect her thoughts. When he returned, his expression was apologetic. I need to check on Sophia. Will you be all right here? We'll be fine, Abigail assured him. "They're discharging Mia this afternoon. Let me send a car for you." She started to refuse, then reconsidered. "Actually, that would be helpful, thank you." Jack hesitated, then leaned down to speak quietly. "About yesterday's conversation. I meant what I said, Abigail, but I understand if you need time or if you decide there's too much complication. Just know that my interest in you began the moment we met. Everything else, the apartment, the job connection, it would have happened regardless." As he turned to leave, Abigail made a decision. "Jack, when Mia's feeling better, that dinner you mentioned, the three of us, I'd like that." His smile was worth every ounce of uncertainty she'd felt. 3 weeks later, Abigail stood in her kitchen preparing a salad while Jack helped Mia with a science project at the dining table. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm of shared meals and weekend outings, getting to know each other gradually and with purpose. Jack had been honest about the complications in his life, the ongoing divorce negotiations with Andrea, Sophia's treatment, the demands of his company. Abigail had been equally forthright about her priorities, Mia first always, and her commitment to rebuilding their life on solid ground. "Mom, look what Mr. Jack helped me make." Mia proudly displayed her model of the solar system, complete with a rotating Earth. "It's wonderful, sweetheart," Abigail praised, catching Jack's eye over Mia's head. The warmth in his gaze made her heart flutter in a way that had become pleasantly familiar. Later, after Mia was tucked in bed, they sat on the small balcony watching city lights twinkle against the night sky. "I had a meeting with Andrea's lawyers today," Jack mentioned, reaching for Abigail's hand. "The divorce is final, all terms settled." "That's good news," Abigail said softly, intertwining her fingers with his. "How do you feel about it?" "Relieved. Ready to move forward." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Speaking of which, I have something to show you." From his pocket, he produced a small velvet pouch. "This isn't what you might think," he said quickly, seeing her startled expression. "It's too soon for that, I know." He opened the pouch and tipped a platinum wedding band, his former ring, into his palm. "I've been carrying this around since the day after we met, trying to decide what to do with it. Today, I finally figured it out." Jack stood and walked to the balcony railing. With a decisive motion, he tossed the ring into the night air. They heard a distant ping as it struck something far below. "Dramatic," Abigail commented with a small smile, though she understood the significance of the gesture. "Symbolic," Jack corrected, returning to sit beside her. "A clean break with the past. I want no misunderstandings between us, Abigail. No ghosts of previous relationships shadowing what we might build together." "And what might that be?" she asked, both fearful and hopeful. Jack considered the question seriously. "Something real. Something lasting. I know it's only been a few weeks, but I've never felt more certain about anyone." He touched her cheek gently. "You and Mia. You've awakened something in me I thought was gone forever." Abigail leaned into his touch, her initial caution finally giving way to trust. "I felt it too, even on the plane. Even when I told myself it was impossible." "Nothing worthwhile is impossible," Jack murmured, drawing her closer. "Just occasionally complicated." Their first kiss was everything Abigail had tried not to imagine. Tender yet passionate, comfortable yet exhilarating. When they finally parted, breathless, she rested her forehead against his. "No more sleeping on my shoulder on airplanes," Jack teased. "No promises," Abigail replied with a laugh. 6 months later, Abigail stood in the pediatric oncology ward watching as Sophia Hayes, now in remission again, pressed the ceremonial button that would officially open the ward's new recreation center. Jack stood beside his sister and niece, pride evident in his expression as he addressed the gathered staff and donors. "When Sophia was first diagnosed, hospital stays meant isolation and fear," he told the audience. "This center represents our commitment to healing the whole child, mind, spirit, and body." From the back of the room, Mia squeezed Abigail's hand excitedly. "Can I show Sophia my new tablet game after this, Mum?" "Of course, sweetie," Abigail whispered back, smiling as she watched the two girls who had become fast friends despite their age difference. After the ceremony, Jack found them in the corridor. "What did you think?" he asked, slipping an arm around Abigail's waist. "It's wonderful," she said honestly. "The children are going to love it." "I have another surprise," Jack mentioned casually. "Remember that medical technology company I was acquiring when we first met? The FDA just approved their pediatric pain management device. It's going to change treatment protocols nationwide." Abigail beamed at him. "Jack, that's incredible." "I have you to thank for much of it," he said seriously. "Your insights have been invaluable." Their partnership had evolved naturally, her practical medical experience complementing his innovative vision. Together, they'd helped design several improvements to the oncology ward, with Dr. Calloway's enthusiastic support. That evening, after a celebration dinner with Laura and Sophia, Jack drove Abigail and Mia home to their apartment, which these days he spent more time in than his own luxurious penthouse. "I've been thinking," he said as they walked through the door, "this place is getting a bit cramped for weekend visits with Sophia. Are you suggesting we need a bigger apartment?" Abigail asked, helping a sleepy Mia with her coat. "Actually, I was thinking of something more permanent." Jack suddenly looked uncharacteristically nervous. "I found a house, near the water, 4 bedrooms, big yard, excellent school district." Abigail froze. "Jack, before you say anything," he interjected hastily, "I'm not suggesting we rush into anything, but I am suggesting that we consider our future together. All of us." After tucking Mia into bed, Abigail rejoined Jack in the living room, her expression thoughtful. "A house is a big step." "I know," he acknowledged. "Too big. Too soon?" Abigail considered the question, reflecting on their journey from that first chance meeting on the plane. "Not too big," she finally said. "But I'd want it to be ours, Jack, not something you provide for us, equal partners." His face broke into a relieved smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." He reached for her hands. "I love you, Abigail, you and Mia both. I want to build a life together, a real family. However that looks, whatever timeline feels right." "I love you too," she admitted, the words feeling natural and true. "And I think Mia would love a yard." "Is that a yes to seeing the house?" "It's a yes to seeing our future," Abigail corrected, leaning forward to kiss him. 1 year to the day after Abigail had fallen asleep on a stranger's shoulder during a turbulent flight, they stood in the backyard of their new home, watching as Mia and Sophia played tag on the lawn. Jack's arm encircled Abigail's waist, her head resting comfortably against his shoulder. "Happy anniversary," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Best nap I ever took," Abigail replied with a smile, thinking of how far they'd come, from strangers on a plane to partners in every sense, building a life neither had imagined possible when they first met. As evening fell, Jack knelt beside Mia's bed during story time, Abigail watching from the doorway as he answered her daughter's endless questions with patience and love. Later, they sat on their porch overlooking Puget Sound, planning Sophia's upcoming visit and Thomas Reeves' end-of-treatment celebration at the hospital. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't fallen asleep on my shoulder?" Jack asked, intertwining his fingers with hers. Abigail considered the question. "I think we would have found each other anyway," she said with certainty. "Some connections are just meant to be." In the gentle Seattle rain that had first welcomed her to this city of new beginnings, Abigail Foster found herself exactly where she belonged, beside a man who wore no ring but offered something far more valuable, a heart fully committed, a love freely given, and a family built on choice rather than chance.